So I will introduce our panelists. First we have Mr. Jaden Burke. He's a 2017 graduate of James Hillhouse High School in New Haven. Then have Ms. Morgan Jackson. She's a junior student at Hamden High School. We have Tatiana Gay, who is a graduate of West Haven High School and a junior at the University of New Haven, majoring in criminal justice with a focus in investigative services. We have Mr. Daniel Tilley, who is a New Haven native and a police officer now in the city of New Haven. Ms. Latyra Nesmith, a Bridgeport native and a probation officer with the state of Connecticut Judicial Branch. And on the end we have Mr. Sheldon Poole, who's also a New Haven native and currently a lawyer with Gordon Reese Law Firm. All right. So we will open up the questioning with Morgan. So up to this point in your life, what has your experience with law enforcement been?
I haven't had much experience with law enforcement, but during the school year, from middle school to now, there's always police officers in the school, and they're usually pretty good with the students and keeping everyone in check and feeling safe.
Yeah.
I've only been in one situation with police. I was thought to be another black male downtown. Someone had stolen a bike, I guess. They thought it was me, and at the time I didn't have my ID on me, so I was with them for a little while. But that's the only thing I can say I have with police.
Tatiana?
I guess my first encounter with law enforcement would be one day I was walking down the driveway to get the mail, and I was approached by an officer telling me there had been a robbery or a burglary rather across the street, and he wanted to know if I had known anything. Of course I told him no, because I didn't. And luckily my mother came home a few minutes later and pulled up as the officer was talking to me, and proceeded to ask him what was going on. And more recently I'm a cashier at ShopRite, and I'm often called to be a witness to like shoplifting. So you just go sit in a room and watch the proceedings. They do a lot of documentation and recording. But recently we had an issue and we had to call the cops on this lady, and she was undocumented and all this other stuff. So just cooperating with the police in that situation and answering any questions they may have, signing some paperwork.
Okay, so for Daniel, who is now on the other side of things, growing up, what was your experience with law enforcement?
Growing up, I've had my plus and minuses experience as far as law enforcement. I've had instances where I've been pulled over for what I thought may have been no reason at all. Then say on the other side of being law enforcement, I kind of understand from this point of view now of exactly why I was pulled over. When back then, when I was younger, I thought, didn't really sit right with me. So now understanding more of how policing works, some of those movements, I would say more so than not, I understand more like, all right, maybe this is why, or maybe this is why I got pulled over.
Growing up in the
Can you all speak up?
Yeah.
Barely.
Right.
growing up in the city of Bridgeport, I've had my fair share of seeing others be affected with police interaction. I myself have never been arrested. However, my father has been in custody for 14 and a half years of my life, in addition to having brothers and cousins who were incarcerated. Again, both positives and negatives, but just culturally, we never kind of get a chance to see the positive light. In my neighborhood, everything is just always all over the place.
For me, I guess it mirrors, what's your name?
Latyra.
My interactions with police have been somewhat like Tilly's, where it's been traffic incidents. There was one incident where I was in fact handcuffed, but nothing came from that. That was a mistake, as one of the gentlemen said down there, something like that situation. But I do have, as Latyra said, several friends who have had encounters with police, and let's be honest, some of them warranted, but most of them not.
So, Jaden, growing up, did your parents ever have the talk with you about when you come in contact with the police, how it should go, and what was the conversation like?
Growing up with my parents, they teach you to respect police officers. They're supposed to keep the community safe. You're told not to talk back to them. Well, as you get older, you you start to have your own morals and make decisions on your own. And I feel like when it comes to certain police, you should, in certain surroundings, you should know how to react to police. Like if you're in a comfortable neighborhood, you know the officers, of course you respect them. You're supposed to respect authority. But if you feel uncomfortable, if you feel like they're pushing the limit, you're threatened, I don't feel that. I don't feel you should show them as much respect as you would show community officers.
So you're saying there are times when you wouldn't necessarily respect an officer?
I feel like respect is one of those things that should go both ways. And if I feel like I'm not being respected by an officer, I don't think I would do the same. That's me. That's my moral.
Morgan, did you ever have that conversation in your home?
The conversation's not usually, it never really applied to me and my sister because when I'm usually out, I'm with my parents. But as I've gotten older, a lot of incidents have happened and been broadcasted with young Black people and incidents with the police, and it's become more of a known fact that there's certain ways to handle things and you just don't usually put yourself in the position, so that nothing that would make it seem like you provoked the incident or anything like that. You always respect them and make sure you do things the right way so that way you're never in the wrong.
Okay. So, I guess, excuse me, my mother and I briefly had this talk once. All I remember was, if you ever get arrested or pulled over, shut up. If you know me, you know I have a tendency, to talk back and be very outspoken and speak my mind. So, for my safety and, to protect my life and my rights, my advice was to be quiet, which I do appreciate. I know I get mouthy at times, and given, the way things have played out recently in society with like Sandra Bland, and especially being a criminal justice major, knowing what I'm taught in school and knowing so much, I feel like that could be very detrimental given certain situations if I were to be put in them. So always be very respectful. Yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir. You might not want to be, like, I do agree respect is very much, earned as it is given, but unfortunately we live in a world where that's not always the case. Like, whether or not, regardless of whether you respect someone, we've seen time and time again that you can still very well lose your life.
Actually, I'm gonna ask Sheldon, what was was that conversation ever had in your home? And
Can
if
you
so-
guys hear me? Do I need this?
Yeah, I need.
All right, cool. The conversation for me progressed the older I got. So obviously when you're younger, it's respect cops, they're there to protect you, and so forth. The older I got, the more advanced I got in school, it was more just a real conversation. Like, some cops, just like people, are assholes. However, you have to make it to a phone. What that means is, as everyone said, respect is given and it's earned. However, every cop isn't going to give you respect, just like every person you meet in a grocery store won't respect you. Every clerk at a store won't respect you. They have that sense of authority. So for me, it was more so, Sheldon, no matter what happens, although you're opinionated and you feel as though you should be able to speak, don't make it a situation where you won't have that opportunity. So that's, the older I got, the more real my parents were with conversations and dealing with the police.
So, Latara, one, what was the conversation like for you as you were growing up? And you now have a son. Will the conversation you have with him be any different than the conversation that you had growing up?
Honestly, I didn't have the conversation as a kid. My mother never felt the need to talk to me. I have 3 children, I have 2 daughters ahead of my son. I never really entertained needing to have a conversation with my girls. However, becoming a mother of a Black boy, things have changed. My eyes been opened a little differently. He's only 5 years old, and yes, I may still have time, but I still entertain different things with my uncles, my aunts, even my grandparents, just trying to understand or learn how they had those conversations with my aunts, my uncles, my uncles and aunts with their children, etc. I do find myself asking questions because unfortunately, I don't know the answer. It's not a guarantee that whatever I instill in him, he'll still be safe. Again, I have a different set of eyes because I became a mother of a black son. I'm not going to say I didn't care for my girls because obviously I do, but with girls, it's just a little bit different. The worry is not necessarily there all the time. And even as a probation officer, there's times where if I'm on the highway, case in point, I just came back from Atlanta, down there you can talk on a cell phone, holding it. And even though I know you can do that and I know I'm not doing anything, I see a cop, I naturally freeze, I drop the phone and I'm like, oh my God, what should I do? And the cop's not even paying me no mind. But it's a harsh reality as a black mom, a mom of a black son, because you really honestly just don't know. So as we continue our journey as mom and son, clearly I'll be doing a lot more research and finding a more comfortable way for myself, because that's not necessarily the conversation that you really want to have with your kid. Just ways of being safe and making sure that he comes home. And then even as a probation officer, my role and my goal is to get home to my kids at the end of the day. Some of the people that I service aren't necessarily the best people of the world. So when I find myself in certain situations, or if those situations come up, just the reality of knowing I have 3 little people that's looking forward to me walking through the door at the end of the night.
So, Dan, now that you're a cop, how is the conversation going to be different from what you got growing up as you talk to your young son as he's growing up?
So the conversation I had with my mother and father when I was growing up was kind of about the same as Sheldon explained, was, just be respectful to cops and do whatever they tell you to do, and make sure you don't give them an attitude and respect them. They have the authority, all that good stuff. I kind of also agree with, I'm sorry, I missed your name. Tatiana, as far as the whole respect thing. Like, respect is earned, not given. It's kind of hard. I apologize ahead of time for playing offense, because I'm going to be doing it all night. It's kind of tough as far as me thinking about how I'm explaining to my son growing up, because for me growing up, like I said, I've had instances with the cops where I got pulled over, they stopped me for whatever reason. I may not thought it was justified at the time or not. And now being a police officer, I see like, all right, this is the reason why they stopped you. And at the time being younger, you don't understand that. You don't understand all the laws. You don't understand what police officers can do as far as detaining you and questioning you and stuff like that, as far as your age or whatever the reason may be. And now growing up, now that I'm a police officer, it's a little bit more of an understanding I have of what and why police officers do what they do. So it's definitely it's a hard conversation to have, knowing I've had experiences on both sides.
Okay, so Jaden, many of those that we've seen
It be you every day. These people are being killed with Skittles in their hand, coming from stores, driving their cars, and there's things we do every day. So it gets a little more personal because you feel like you can relate to them, and you say, why is that not me? Why can't that be me? It makes you more aware.
Seeing that a lot of those who we've seen on the news that have been killed by cops more recently are around your age, what kind of feelings is that evoking you?
It makes you more aware of what's occurring around you, and in my case, I think a lot of times it makes me think of my friends and the people I hang around with and the type of things that I do when I'm out in public and how I present myself. And sometimes I might want to change either the people I'm around or where we go or how we are in public, because you just don't want to put yourself in positions to be any that would be similar to the position some of the people that this occurs to are in. So you try to just change that and be aware of your surroundings and compare your situation to theirs to see if there's anything you can change to make your situation
It says,
different.
when you log into Facebook and watch a man being shot, then bleeding to death, even though he was unarmed, and the police refuse to administer any form of first aid, for many that evokes an entirely different level of anger and frustration. To watch that happen once can be devastating, but to see similar events taking place every few weeks can possibly push some people to the brink of mentally breaking down. Thoughts?
So the fact that no first aid was given, like there are no words for that. Like I'm not a cop, so but I am taught, you know, in class, you shoot to injure, like to stop them from coming at you, as opposed to shooting to kill. So if you shoot someone and then you don't administer first aid, that kind of negates the whole shooting to stop the confrontation, as opposed to the shooting to, you know, end someone's life. I feel like if you shoot someone and you don't administer aid, you're kind of just waiting for what's to come. Can you repeat the question again? I know that was
Well, it was more of a quote, but I'm gonna just ask Dana. She said basically there's a difference between what we expect as far as the shootings, and then we see some cops and we think that they're shooting to kill. As far as procedure, when you're dealing with someone that you're pulling over or whatever, as far as shooting, are cops taught, how are they taught to aim when they're shooting?
I can probably talk about this all day. The short answer would be the procedure as far as like shooting. We're not taught to shoot people in the legs. We're not taught to shoot people in the arms. We're taught to shoot at the biggest center of mass on the body. So that just happens to be pretty much the center of the body right here. As far as shooting to injure, like I said, we're taught to shoot at the center mass of the body. Whatever comes after that is pretty much, if they're injured, they're deceased at that point. It depends on, as far as your department, it kind of goes from department to department as far as if we're medically trained to treat some type of injuries. I actually had this conversation with somebody not too long ago. They had the shooting in Bridgeport, and there was a big uproar about as far as giving him medical aid, them standing around not doing anything. I don't know how they're trained down there. I know some departments aren't trained medically, and even for me it's tough knowing that I'm a police officer, and it may come to a point where I have to shoot somebody, and how I would react to it. For me personally, I don't think I could sit there and just watch somebody die. I've never been put in that situation yet. Hopefully I never have to be in that situation ever in my career. But if it ever does come, I hope I react the right way. Pretty much it.
So, I'm gonna read another quote. The other day, a friend of mine who was an officer, or was an officer, and this person is white. She emailed me about the Philando Castile case. So I just want to read a quote from her, and then retire, I'll get your reaction. And it says, "After seeing this video, I think the jury, since the cop was afraid, articulating that you or others are in imminent danger of death or grave bodily harm is the get out of jail free card for law enforcement. But the jury seemed only to note that the cop was afraid, and they wrongly stopped there. The jury failed to apply the remaining information from the dash cam to their deliberations, and that's what pisses me off. If the cop is afraid, racist, and stupid, all those are the cop's problems, and the death of a compliant man should not be the result. With this cop and his silent, lurking backup officer, I absolutely think the interaction would have been handled differently if the family had been white." And this, like I said, was from an officer that emailed me this, an ex-officer.
In my own opinion, I agree. Unfortunately, I believe that there's some people who naturally color makes a difference. We all can say it doesn't, but the reality, it is what it is. It's all about unconscious bias. You know, you could firmly believe that, you know, everybody's gonna be treated the same, and then you're up against something and it turns out to be something the other way. I'll even give the example, my son goes to private school out in Fairfield, and we're at the pre-K4 graduation. Pictures that goes up in the classroom throughout the year. You know, they do all the little kitty presentations, they put up all the pictures. My son and the other black kid in the class is not in the presentation. That's pictures. That's something small and minute, you know. So when you think of how would it go in an extreme case, I believe it could be the same way. Something as small as being able to take pictures and be able to represent your classroom as a whole was ignored. And even in that instance, it became, oh, you know, I only took the pictures, you know, I forwarded the pictures to the person who put together the slide, and from the slide it became, oh, I only put the slide together based off the pictures that I got. Nobody can give an answer as to why the other two weren't included. But again, I say all of that to say, when you look at something as small as being able to represent everyone in the picture, and then you look at a case where, you know, something extreme can happen, unconscious bias is real. The reality of it sucks. We don't like to admit it. Why? Because it says you're wrong, you know, and that you're at fault, and then it makes you have to dig a little deeper with yourself. So that's my take on it.
Children, any thoughts?
You mind reading the quote just so I could?
Well, I'll read.
Well, you can paraphrase.
I'll read the second half.
Yeah, you can paraphrase.
It said, the jury failed to apply the remaining information from the dash cam to their deliberations, and that's what pisses me off. If the cop is afraid, racist, and stupid, all those are the cop's problems, and the death of a compliant man should not be the result. With this cop and his silent, lurking backup officer, I absolutely think the interaction would have been handled differently if the family had been white.
Well, first, just based off the quote, you have to understand that person's unconscious bias in what she wrote. Because just because you're white doesn't mean you're racist, and doesn't mean you're stupid. So that shows her bias in the answers are starting there. The jury idea is, this is why I sympathize with Tilly and other officers, is that for me and other lawyers, our job starts at the end of the situation. Whereas our only job is to paint the picture as to what is more favorable for our client. So in this instance, it could have been the fact so simply that the prosecutor painted a better picture than the defense attorney. And we can't always blame it on the jury, because the jury are supposed to act as reasonable people and only use what they're shown or what they're told. So I can get a video completely, like everyone says, oh, they had the video, this is a make or break case. I can get a video and I can make it seem as though that video does not matter. And if the jury believes me, then the cop gets off free. Or I can make this video the most important thing out of the case and say, look, the whole argument that she made, not only just because the cop was scared doesn't mean this guy wasn't scared. But it's also, like I said earlier, it's those situations where, as Tilly pointed out, they're trained to make certain actions based off, they're trained to react. No matter what their bias is, they're trained to react to situations. So the officer could have been scared. And the victim also could have been scared. And I think in her quote she said in the first part it was, she blamed it on the officer, but I blame it on the county, the town. Because you hire this man and you put a gun in this man's hand without testing these biases and these, so sorry to go over the question, but I just had to make that point, that we blame that man, but he didn't give himself a gun in that situation. He didn't give himself the keys to the car to patrol. He didn't give himself that power. But as far as the jury goes, it goes back to my first point, is that unfortunately, even though we're dealing with someone's life, who paints the better picture? And that's why a lot of people are scared to go to trial, because once you go to trial, you get 12 people, 6 or 12 people to determine everything you actually went through, when I just get up and talk about it.
So the last two, you both talked about a little bit about bias.
I really have a hard time with people making it always someone else's fault. And granted, it's warranted. It really is warranted, but we have to start putting ourselves in situations where it is unwarranted, because we did everything right. We did pull over even though we didn't want to, and we put both our hands on the steering wheel. Officer, how are you doing today? You try to de-escalate the situation. But to get back to your question, there are biases, but that's never going to change. That's a part of human nature. It's a lot of biases you have to go through.
Okay, we're going to get back to biases, but I just want to ask Dan, so we as the public are not trained to handle those types of situations, but the cops are. So should the standard be the same, or should we be holding cops to a different standard when it comes to how they react to those situations?
Well, outside of this conversation, I don't know if I had with you or someone else, that I believe they should have training for people in the cities to how to deal with police officers. Yeah, we are trained to deal with those certain situations, but like Sheldon was alluding to, when people start acting nervous, we get nervous. We're human too. We can't see their hands, we're asking somebody to show their hands, we can't see their hands, they're reaching for something. We don't know what they're reaching for. The first thing in our head is the worst thing that could possibly be. We want to go home at night just like they want to go home at night. So, try to stay on the question. What was the question again?
No, that's what you. I think you pretty much answered it. Should the standard be different?
Oh, yeah. So I mean, I'm not saying the standard should be different, but I believe the standard that we learn, like how we're taught to deal with certain situations, I believe it should be taught to other people so they're aware of how we deal with situations. So it's a better understanding with the community, to police officers, to like why we do what we do at certain instances. Like if we can't see someone's hands, that's the most dangerous thing on this job. If we can't see someone's hands, not that we start freaking out, but like that's a red flag to us. If we're asking you to show your hands and we can't see your hands, that's a red flag to us. So when someone says, oh, that black male got shot for no reason, and say on the video it's the cops screaming 4 or 5 times, show me your hand, show me your hand, show me your hands, and he keeps reaching and doesn't stop. People are like, oh, the cop shot him for no reason, it's because he was black. Well, the cop may have shot him because he may have seen him reaching for something that he thought may have been a gun, and he told him 5, 6 times not to reach for the gun or reach for whatever he's reaching for, and he still didn't comply. Like I said, people get nervous, cops get nervous, they start wondering what they're reaching for, people don't listen, things happen. Whether they're justified or not, it kind of depends on the situation, but like I said, I think people should be taught on what we learn so they understand what to do and what not to do in certain situations.
Yeah, it's something I
I have to say I disagree. I actually saw an article on exactly what he was saying online the other day. It was saying how, I believe Manhattan, the school system wants to implement in the curriculum teaching middle school students how to cooperate with police officers. I think there's a clear and distinct line between teaching one to be cooperative and compliant versus saying, hey, these are police officers, this is what you have to do when you come in contact with them. For example, I'm a cashier at ShopRite, and every once in a while, I have a day and it's like, look, the customer's yap, and I'm not in the mood, so I'll give it back to him. And I get reprimanded for that, and that should be the same case with the officers. You don't, like, in this situation, I wouldn't say, oh, we need to implement as a store how to teach customers how to come in here and interact with the cashier. You don't do that. So why should we as a society sit back and say, hey, we need to teach students, middle school students at that, how to interact with police? First of all, why would middle school students even be encountering police officers, given that 9 times out of 10, they're between the ages of like 12 and 15? Like, why is there not a parent present? Why isn't there some other adult who can serve as like, I can't even think of the term, but as a middleman, in essence. Like, there's no reason why a 12-year-old has to answer to an officer without a witness or someone else who can speak on their behalf. I do agree, yes, be compliant with the officer. Put your hands where they can be seen. That's different than, Philando Castile doing that from the jump. Whereas, like he said, you're told 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12 times. That's completely different. If you've been told time and time and time again, then unfortunately, yeah, you probably did deserve to get shot. But when I'm complying from the jump, I have no reason to lose my life.
And I'll let you address what she said to you if you'd like.
I would have to respectfully disagree with what you're saying, but I do understand what you're saying. I understand it's a very thin line when it comes to situations as you were describing, as far as people complying and they still end up losing their lives or still end up being harassed by police officers. I get that, but I'm not saying as far as teaching people to like, this is what you do 100% of the time, don't question the police officers, don't do this, don't do that, and I'm not saying police officers don't get reprimanded, because trust me, we do.
people complain to us all the time. The biggest complaint we always get is that we were disrespectful. Not that we pulled somebody out of the car, not that we violated their rights, is that we were disrespectful and someone was raising their voice and didn't treat somebody with respect. So trust me, we get reprimanded for that kind of stuff. But as far as education-wise, I'm not saying there's an end-all be-all to this is what you do with police officers. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, this is what you do. I'm just saying that as far as education-wise, to understand on why we do certain things and not trying to take anyone's rights away or saying like, oh, this is what you do. Like I said, I'm a civilian. I grew up in New Haven in the inner city long before I was a police officer, so trust me, I understand what you're saying and where you're coming from. But as far as the education-wise, I think it would be a great help as far as people understanding, even when it comes to situations where someone gets shot and killed and people uproar, riot, burn cities down. People may have a different understanding to maybe not agree, but understand why it got to that point in that situation. You don't have to agree with it. Just like I don't agree with some situations, with certain situations I've seen on the news. But I understand exactly, not exactly, but I understand somewhat how it got to that situation.
I would also like to add something. Unfortunately, we live in a day and time where kids are getting arrested very early. In middle school, honestly, it's too late. A lot of things start happening in the elementary years where the behaviors are already there. You have children as young as 8 years old that are joining gangs and doing real deal crimes. It's easy for us to say, okay, they have parents at home, X, Y, Z, but in some cases there aren't parents home who are going to reprimand them for some of the behaviors that they also have. And it sucks. A lot of times we all say, when it's time for us to march and we all want to fight, but then when it's time for us to put on the suit and actually do it, some of us just sit home. And we just kind of wait and see how things fall out, and then we kind of like to sit back and point the finger. When you're looking at prevention, that's the key. Honestly, I would say 4th and 5th grade is the key age to start, because by the time they get to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, unfortunately, some of them have made up their minds, and some of the behaviors will only worsen. When I started with the state of Connecticut, I started in juvenile detention. I've had 6-year-olds coming. You have your schools, you have your churches, you have your community centers, you have your community leaders, you have your parents. We all have failed at some point across the board to make the child become who he or she is. So yes, I do agree that prevention should start very early, because it could minimize whatever goes on later on. As a PO, I have plenty of kids that are walking through the building as adults now. I told them in detention, get it together, and I've done this, that, and the third, with them, and I've worked with them. It's not like they were in detention for 30 days and they went home. Some kids were there the entire time I was there. And as they walk the halls of probation, is, hey, Miss Tyra, how you doing? Clearly not great. I'm doing good, but you're not. And clearly you didn't listen to what I said to you a couple years back, because now you're the adult that's roaming the hall saying, hey, like nothing ever happened. So again, it's all about accountability and us taking ownership and playing our roles. It takes a village. And unfortunately, a lot of us like to live in an individualistic world. Oh, that so-and-so's not my kid, when yes, he or she is your kid if they're in your community. That's all I have to say. Sorry.
So, no, I think that was a necessary piece. So, we started by talking about biases, and I think the three of you on the end who are in professional settings would agree that there are biases. And there may even be some within your profession that can be labeled as racist. So one of the public's biggest question is, why isn't more done to expose those people who hold those beliefs and act on those beliefs, who might be viewed as racist? Anyone you could. Why isn't more done to expose that?
I'll say this, for the state of Connecticut, they've made the initiative to start. We actually have a multicultural unit. Within that unit, there's a series of trainings that go out, all involving cultural responsiveness. We have one particular course that's Foundations of Cultural Competency or Cultural Responsiveness. It's actually FCR, so it would be responsiveness. That's a mandated course. All state employees have to go through this course. Those thereafter, it's optional. However, each year we have to do 40 hours. And within 40 hours, we have to have a certain number of hours that is geared toward cultural whatever. So it could be youth, it could be, I don't know, Jamaican culture, Puerto Rican culture. It just breaks it down in itself. So I can say for the state of Connecticut, they've taken strides, and it's not necessarily just dealing with cultural competency in regards to the services you rendered, but also just working alongside your colleagues and giving people a better understanding of how to interact with people that's different from you. I myself, I'm a part of that particular committee. That's something that I'm into. You know, my coworker that sit next to me might not have that as an interest, but they have to go to a certain amount of trainings. Me, I'm gonna go to all of them, and then I'm also gonna be the voice in the office. So I can't say the state isn't trying, because, and when I say the state, I'm looking at more just the judicial branch. They've made strides. I've been with the state for, 10 years now, or almost 10 years. This has occurred within the last 5 or 6. So, you know, it's baby steps, but we're getting there, and hopefully it'll impact at some point.
I guess it depends on what kind of bias you're talking about. Now, is it bias to the point where, for me, example, they're not taking minority or white clients because of their bias, or they're not eating with the other black attorneys, or they're not eating with other white attorneys? And I think that matters, because if it's to the point where it's affecting the business, whatever the business is, I think it's much easier to oust that person. However, if they don't want to eat lunch with me because of my skin color, how do you prove that? And I think a lot of people are nervous because most of the people whose the other people's biases affect them, are in positions to make that call. So if you're just starting out as your job, how do you tell someone your boss is racially biased and all he did was not eat lunch with you? Then it's going to look bad against you for the rest of your career, that you may be sensitive. Or you may not be, let's be honest, some people make it as simple as you may not be cut out for this type of work because you felt that way. So I say all that to say that I don't know. You could train people as much as you want, but that's not always going to get rid of biases.
Dan?
I'm kind of piggyback off of what Sheldon is. It's kind of hard to prove someone's biases and maybe racism. And as far as my field, parts of policing, as much as it may scream out to some people that this cop is biased or this cop is racist, it's not that simple when it comes to be like proving it. So you say white cops only pull over black people. It's in an inner city, predominantly black community. Oh, this cop, he's only pulling over black people. He's got to be racist. He pulls me over every day coming from home from work. It's kind of hard to come down and prove it, because when you look at it, it's like, it's an inner city. There's mostly African American people that populate that city. Whether it's a black or white officer, by the numbers, the cars he pulls over, a majority going to be black people. Whether he's a white officer, black officer. I can tell you, I pull over people all the time. Majority of them are black people. Not by I see them and I pull them over. It's the fact that they create a violation, I pull them over. I work in New Haven. It's predominantly black in the area I work. So they most likely, I would say 70% of the time, they're black. And I grew up in the city. I'm a black officer. Like I said, it's not because they're black, it's just how it rolls. And I can tell you, as a police officer pulling over cars, it's hard to see who's driving the car when you pull it over. So when people come to a situation like that, it's like, oh, they only pull over black people. You see the statistics in New Haven, it's like, oh, well, 70% of people, just throwing out a number, I don't know if this is real numbers, like 70% of people are black people that get pulled over. In the areas we police in New Haven, predominantly black, it's hard to prove that. Or just like even other people's biases, like say our biases, or as a culture, as black people. I can be on the call, someone's trying to explain something to another officer that's on scene, he happens to be white. I show up on scene, that black person automatically gravitates towards me and starts explaining the story. For some reason or another, I can't explain it, but it happens all the time. They gravitate towards me and start explaining the story. I showed up after it happened, have no idea what's going on. They told the story to the white officer. Halfway through, I show up, they gravitate towards me and start telling the story. And it's kind of, like I said, it's hard to prove biases and stuff like that when it comes to situations, at least on my job. I don't know, as far as being a lawyer and probation, you said you got a whole bunch of programs and stuff like that going on. I don't know about any programs we have that kind of like weed stuff out like that. And I'm not saying there aren't officers that are biased. I'm not saying there aren't officers that are racist. But when it comes to like reprimanding them, and as far as going a legal way about it, it's hard to prove.
Could we ask?
I was gonna take questions at the end,
Okay.
but if you wanna ask one,
Yeah,
it's a pressing
I've got a
question.
burning one.
Go ahead, man. You look like you was dying to ask a question back there.
Yeah, is there any type of vetting that goes on when a person wants to be a police officer? You know, like, do they do a thorough background check? And what I'm getting at is a person becomes a police officer, and then he or she gets into an incident where he empties his revolver into a person, you know, shoots him 6 or 7 times because he was scared, and then they do you find out that in his background are racist people or people who he was brought up in an atmosphere that was conducive to him really not being there. And what my question is, how much of a vetting is done, or how much of a background check is done before that person is allowed to become a police officer?
It differs from department to department. Generally, it has a like they do background check. They check if you have a criminal record, stuff like that. They look into. I don't believe they look too far in like family history and stuff like that, other than past like criminal history and stuff like that. Like I said, it's something like that. It's hard to prove like legally. I mean, something as simple as saying, just throwing something out there like their father was a member of like the Klan or something like that. I mean, something like that kind of sticks out. It's not something you really gotta dig deep for. Like something as far as like a bias like embedded in them, like growing up. As far as like, say they just grew up in predominantly white town, so they never interacted with African Americans like that. So that kind of internally not really aware of it kind of gears them towards being like not afraid. Well, I guess like afraid of African American males. It's hard to weed something out like that in a background check. Say like, oh well, he grew up in a prominently white town, he must be racist. It's kind of hard to prove in as far as legally, and say he has a bias or something like that. Like we kind of alluded to earlier, we all have biases, whether we want to admit to them or we not even aware of them. We all have biases, so it's kind of hard to kind of put somebody out of a job or saying they can't have a job, this and there, off of a bias that they might not be aware of, or something that you can't even really root out in a preliminary background check.
That sufficiently answer your question?
It does, but we could talk off.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the students on the panel, has anyone ever taken the time to explain to you what your rights are when coming in contact with law enforcement?
Growing up, as much as I know, I'm aware that you can't be arrested if they don't have a warrant. I know that. I know if they're holding you without anything, they're just questioning you, and they don't have a real reason to put you in their car, you can leave. And that's pretty much all I was taught growing up. I don't know much more than that.
And that's not correct, right?
No, it's
as
not.
far as being arrested,
Yeah.
I think they can't search your vehicle or
Right.
search your own without a warrant.
Right.
And as far as an arrest, and I'm just saying, I just want to make sure.
No. It's
That
not
correct?
entirely accurate what he said.
Okay. So
Can you explain it to me?
So, you said that you can't be arrested without a warrant, and if you're being questioned, they can't technically detain you, correct? Is that what you're saying? So, you can be arrested without a warrant. If someone has probable cause to believe that you committed a crime, you can't be arrested without a warrant. 9 out of 10 times, people we arrest are without warrants. Warrants are just pretty much saying that we don't believe we have enough to arrest somebody. So pretty much the warrant, it gets sent to a judge, and we put it in the judge's hand, saying like, hey, this is what we got. Do you think this is probable cause enough to arrest somebody? Judge signs it. That's up to the judge. Then that's a warrant. Then we go arrest somebody. Like I said, if on scene we have enough probable cause, which most departments, that's how it happens. You show up, you get arrested. As far as being detained and questioned, like I alluded to earlier, this is why I kind of wish people got educated more in school, as far as what we can and can't do and what their rights are. If someone has a reasonable suspicion that you committed a crime, whether that's you match a description, which unfortunately sometimes the descriptions are very broad. So if you match the description of somebody, say someone broke into somebody's car, description is black male, 5'9", 6 feet, red shirt, match the description, right? Did you do it? No. But if I come stop you, I have the right to detain you and question you for it because you match the description. Unfortunately, that's how it happens a lot. And that's how the gray area comes, where it's like, oh, they stopped me because I was black. Essentially, yes, they stopped you because you were black, but it's not because you were racist. Not because they were racist, it's because you matched the description. And it happens with us all the time. We get the description, comes out, black male, 5'9", 6 feet, wearing blue jeans, whatever shirt, and you look down the street and 4 or 5 people match that description. By law, I can stop all 5 of those people, detain them, and question them about whatever happened because they match the description. Then it comes to the point where it's like, oh, I got stopped for no reason, stopped because I'm black, and like I said, unfortunately, because you match the description, that's how it ends up. And some officers don't go to the extent to explain that to you. Like, I pride myself on explaining to you, like, if that was the case and I stopped you, I'm like, hey, you matched the description, this is what happened. I question you. You say, hey, I was X, Y, and Z. The crime happened on A and B. We let you go, and I say, hey, sorry, this is why we stopped you. I try to explain the best I can. Some people don't even want to hear it. They're like, hey, whatever, man, F you, and go about their business. But for me, I try to explain why.
So, Sheldon, I'm going to ask you, why do you think that there isn't more emphasis with us as the black community on educating our youth about what their rights are in those type of situations?
I'm not sure, because I can say, at least for my lifetime, I was younger, this is just came up going on. So why isn't it taught? I'm not sure. It's one of those things where you can argue that some people don't teach it because they don't want to open the door to it. Because if you tell them, look, these are your rights, this is what you have the right to do, some people feel, as we all do, more opinionated into certain situations, which can also escalate, as Tilly said, escalate a situation where it wasn't as serious as we're now making it. For example, Tilly was saying how all you need is reasonable suspicion to stop someone. That's 100% true. However, what the description is, depending on who the attorney is, Tilly said, what was it, 5'9", black male, red shirt, running south on this street, right? And I find out, yeah, he was 5'9", he was running red shirt, and he was on this street. Was he sweating? So it's hard to speak matter-of-factly about certain things that we deal with. But back to the question, why we don't teach kids, what are you going to take away from? Are we going to take away math? Are we going to take away science?
I'm not talking about necessarily in schools. I'm just talking about when we deal with the kids in our communities. Why do you think there isn't more emphasis put on us as people who know the law, just telling them so they don't end up in situations where they're getting pulled over and their cars are illegally getting searched because they don't know that? I'm just saying, as a community, why do you think we don't do a better job?
Because we're doing a terrible job. I mean, if we're gonna be honest and talk about what everyone else is doing, we have to start with ourselves. We're doing a terrible job. I mean, even me and my aspect. I mean, I'm only 24 years old. I can go to a school and talk to kids if I want to. Have I done it? No. We're doing a terrible job. As a community, we are not doing a good job helping our kids.
Which goes back to what I said earlier. It's all about accountability in the community.
Yeah.
We have to take ownership. There's plenty of us that just say, okay, well, my job is from 9 to 5. At 5:05, I'm all set. I'm going home, I'm cooking dinner. That's just what it is. A lot of us don't want to take that extra time. And then when you look at the community, some communities, there's no resources there. You know, where am I going to go? The community center? Well, if they shut the community center down, where else am I going to go? Invite everybody to my house? That's not gonna happen either. You know, it sucks, but again, it's all about accountability and ownership. Us taking back our community and being responsible for our kids. You know, I personally, I'm a community person. I'm always in the community center with the kids. That's just me. I got 10 other POs next to me that's not gonna do the same thing that I do. And it all goes back to that whole philosophy of it takes a village. A lot of us don't wanna be in a village. We done moved up to the east side and we comfortable.
Is there a question?
So I guess my question towards what you guys just said is just like, is it also, or could it also be the simple fact that teaching somebody their rights and then telling them to comply when an officer says this, that, and the third are two completely different ideas? Like, I can tell Morgan, once you get your car, somebody try to pull you over and search you, they can't do that. Like, by law, they can't do that, they don't have a warrant for it. But the police officers get there, we have suspicion to think that da-da-da-da is going on, let's search your car. And Morgan's like, no, I was taught, I know my rights, no, you can't search my car. And then something bad happens to her because she went against what the police officers told her, because at that moment in time, the recording or whatever is going on will only be seen after. She still has to make it to the next point to be able to say, what they did to me was illegal, to tell her story.
Just a response to that, I think it goes back to my point with speaking so matter-of-factly. What's unfortunate in that situation, we have to make sure the people teaching our kids know the entire story. Being that just because you told her that no one can search her car when she gets pulled over, well, because that's what the law says, well, that's not exactly true. Because if Tilly walks up to a car and smells weed, he can search the car for as much as he wants. I use weed, let's see, he sees a white powder substance, because I don't know what the laws are on weed now. But see, he sees a white powder substance all over the dashboard. Tilly can search that entire car now, everything that's not locked. So we have to, going back to the question, we are doing a terrible job, and we should teach them the laws, but we have to make sure we aren't teaching them, one, outdated laws, and also, two, just simply the wrong things. Go ahead.
To piggyback on what you said, like, it's not black and white all the time with the laws. Like she just said, oh, well, if I tell somebody that they can't search your car without a warrant, well, in some instances they can't, in some instances they can. Like Sheldon said, in certain instances, if I see something in the car that gives me the right to search it, I can search it. If I don't see anything in the car or smell anything in the car, I may not have the right to search it. So it's not so.
Actually, when you say when I see something in the car, is that at your discretion, or is there guidelines as to what you can see?
If I can
Or what
see,
you may have saw or have not saw.
Proceed. So legally, anything exposed to the public is fair game. So there are cases now where, because they have drones, say you have a drone and like it has a camera on it, and the cop does like a flyover over your house, right? And you don't have a protective fence on the top of your house. The cop looks down and sees 300 marijuana plants. He has the right to now come to your house and say, I need to get in your backyard.
I think, well, my question was more or less, is it visible or not, as opposed to what it is that they're making a determination based on, that they saw in the car.
Oh, from what I told is it just has to be visible. Anything exposed to the public, and he believes that it's either a weapon or, let's say, a narcotic or anything of that nature. He can search the vehicle.
So it's up to his discretion.
It's plain you say, anything that's visibly visible.
So a couple points, and I appreciate your comments, right? But the conversation for me as a father has changed. It's not about teaching my kids the law, it's about surviving an incident, right?
That's what I was trying to do.
Because as soon as the cops pull you over, all that stuff's out the window. I don't even want them talking to the police officer in any way to give them reason to say one thing. But the other thing to the point is, in the NAACP Youth Council, every other year we've had a police officer, usually Shafiq, who comes out and talks about interaction with the police officers and how, again, knowing your rights and things of that nature. And I would invite any of you all to be able to come and do that for our young people at some point this year. But I just wanted to talk about that because, we have this adversary relationship with police in general. However, you might be a great guy, I don't know you, Brad, but you might be a great guy personally, individually. But the kind of distrust with the police, so my original comment, I said, the suspicion is black, right? I go back to the story when Earl Graves Jr. was in New York City getting off of, he's the owner of Black Enterprise. He's 6'4", dressed in a $5,000 suit. The call comes across the radio, black male, black t-shirt, 5'8", and they arrested Earl Graves Sr., Jr., you know, who's 6'4". So I think that's where, you know, when we say black, you know, all the things that's going on throughout the country and our community has happened to black men, unarmed, whatever the case may be. So I would just like for you to speak to that point. I think I hear you speaking from a kind of technical standpoint, but can you talk about what your perception of what the community's perception is of all these things, stops and things of that nature?
Well, I was kind of explaining before when we first started that I've had experiences, like I grew up in New Haven. Grew up in New Haven all my life. I've only been a cop a year or so. So I have more understanding from that point of view, more so than, you know, being a cop. Like I've stated earlier, like it's clearly people who have biases and sometimes racist views in policing. It's not like it's not there. I'm not saying that. But as far as you saying like the person who got arrested didn't really match the description, the suspicion that he was black. In that situation, probably was the case. Like I said, I'm not trying to defend every single case that happens to be all like, it has to be every single situation where it was skeptical whether a black male happened to be shot, killed, or arrested. I'm not saying in every situation there's a reason why it happened and the police was justified. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that a lot of the times, sometimes our biases get in the way of seeing the bigger picture. Like I said earlier, it's in your inner city and the description comes over black male wearing whatever. It tends to match a lot of African American males walking the street, and someone might get wrongfully arrested for matching that description. Not saying that the cop, whoever arrested him, was racist, but he happened to match the description. That kid didn't know what was going on.
I guess it makes you feel like there's very little hope. In essence, your life is put up to, rather than living up to your potential, you're being, I guess, held up to the standard of a statistic. So when you publish things like that, you're not insinuating, but you're almost setting it, it's like precedent. So like, once you put that out there, you put it in people's heads, and then that's the thought. That's kind of what people have come to terms with. And once you come to terms with things like that, they're, in a sense, more likely to happen. So like, if you go around telling, black men, like, there's a 50% chance you're gonna go to jail, then you might be more inclined to do something to cause you to go to jail. Whereas if you put out positive statistics saying, such and such percent of black men go to college and graduate, you instill it in them that, okay, these are people that look like me that have done X, Y, Z. So there's a larger possibility that, I can do that as well. Whereas when you're saying 50% of people like you go to jail, well, what do you have to look up to, in a sense?
So Morgan, would you say that you see typically more of the negative messaging, or do you see more of the positive messaging?
I think I definitely see more of the negative messaging, and I think it's just because not even that there's more negative messaging out there, but just we're exposed to more of it than there is positive, and I think that so many people aren't aware of what they're capable of doing and the opportunities that are available for them, and they see the bad things all the time, and it makes it a reality for them, and that's what they're used to seeing, and that's what they expect to live up to.
So Jaden, as a young black man, knowing that classmates possibly at some point are going to end up incarcerated, what kind of thoughts is that evoking?
The first thought, it hurts, because like you said, I'm a black male, so that's saying half of my friends, half of my class is going to be in jail. I don't like that feeling. I see it as negative, and I can also see it as a positive, because hearing that at the end of the day it is numbers. You know, it's not like these numbers are being made up. So it's like a wake up call. Like Tilly Sheldon and I'm sorry, man, what's your name?
Latira.
And Latira been saying it starts with you. Like, you, if you want to stop seeing numbers like that, it starts in the community. We have to stop. We have to stop self-hate and feeling like we're already losing and stealing, and everything starts with yourself. But it does hurt to see that.
So, part of the problem is America that disproportionately affect minorities. So, what as the community, I'll start with Sheldon and kind of work our way down. Is there anything we as citizens can do to help try to change the laws so that we're not being disproportionately affected by this?
Of any law, at least in Connecticut, written to disproportionately affect a minority as to a majority. So I don't know exactly.
Well, there are certain drug laws in the way that they're worded. They disproportionately affect African Americans. Like the best example was way back when they had the whole cocaine thing, and there's different sentencing for different types of cocaine. And the cocaine that you saw in the inner cities, the sentencing was much stiffer. So when we see inequalities like that, is there anything that we can do? And it doesn't have to be like that, but just in general, there are things we don't like about the way the law is set up.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we can do to help change those laws?
Yeah. Well, I know you just use this as an example, but I think it's a response to any law is that, first of all, stop doing it unless it's something that is productive and you feel as though it's limiting your rights. So, I mean, cocaine is the obvious answer. Stop selling cocaine. Stop doing cocaine. But I can't really think of an example of something that law is written about that you should be doing that disproportionately affects minorities. I can't. Unless, I mean, I'm not saying there aren't, but off the top of my head, I can't think of anything like the obvious one, like you said, is drugs. Stop doing drugs. Stop selling drugs. And then there's no issue. Then there's no disproportionate law because you're not facing the law because you aren't doing drugs.
I understand what you're saying, but the fact of the matter is people are going to do drugs. People are going to have drugs. So why should our black kids be getting different sentences than their white counterparts?
Why do our black kids have to have drugs?
They don't, but the fact is that they do. So when that happens, why should we expect different results?
I'll answer your question, but I'm gonna start by saying this: we have to. That thinking alone is negative. That they're gonna have drugs, so we should make the laws more fair. Let's just not have drugs. But as far as the laws goes, everyone can lobby. I mean, there are a lot of bigger picture issues you can do. You can lobby, you can write letters. I think what you're asking is like a more direct answer, and I think our only options are literally lobbying, or maybe writing your council, maybe writing your alderman, the mayor, and starting there. But that's all I have. But the whole disproportionately affecting minorities, I don't know, and I'm gonna keep saying this because I don't know a law that limits you from doing something you should be doing that disproportionately affects people. And
I'm not going to harp on it, but I think you're getting stuck on the fact that it's something that they shouldn't be doing. I completely agree that they shouldn't be doing it. But when they do, unfortunately, why should the sentencing be different?
The sentencing shouldn't be different. It shouldn't be different.
So I guess that's my question. Since that's what it is there anything we can do about it? And I think your answer was we can, talk to the councilman and all the people in the community.
That's all I have.
And that's definitely a sufficient answer. I don't know if either of you have anything to add to that.
Again, it's all about educating yourself and putting yourself out there. You don't necessarily even have to just write your councilman. Why not start trying to become the councilman? Take control of your community. Again, it's all about ownership. You want change within your direct environment. Obviously, it does not appear that anyone else is going to do that for you, so you take control. Take it back. We all like to say, oh, we should do this and we should do that. We like to tell people what to do. We like to dictate things, but we don't want to move. And it goes back to what I said earlier. A lot of times we want to fight, but not everybody's willing to put on the suit and do it. You want change, you have to become the change that you speak. Even going back with the state in itself, with the cultural competency board that we have, I'm a part of the policy committee, where I review policies and we sit and we have discussions and talk about how things should change and why. Again, it's the small stuff. Not everyone wants to take the baby steps. You know, it's unfortunate. It's fact of the matter. Others' money stretch longer than ours. And because their money stretch longer, guess what? They get off. They get off. They have access to certain things. Not everybody has that same, not everyone is on the same playing field. And it's up to us to take it back. We can say, write the mayor. Well, why not position yourself to become the mayor? That's all I have.
I agree with that. Like, make yourself become the councilwoman. Like, when you're writing these council people and these higher ups, 9 times out of 10 they don't look like you. So they're making laws to essentially benefit people that also don't look like you. You know, all the politicians want to be hard on drugs and hard on this and hard on that, but you don't want to be hard on your own people. So, you know, when you have money like that, you can afford things like cocaine and heroin and Oxycontin and all these other, you know, drugs. But when, you know, your little Johnny's got arrested for heroin, you know, oh, all of a sudden, you know, let's not be so harsh. So in order to balance that out, you want to be harsh on these drugs that are so detrimental to communities, but you don't want to, you know, hurt your reputation because you don't want to be the mayor whose son is in jail for whatever. So, you know, you make laws that, you know, benefit your people, but still accomplish that being harsh on the topic, given that they're harsher on other people. Yeah, it's not correct, but that's kind of just the way it is. Should it be changed? Of course, but we don't have enough people who look like us to fight for us and, you know, get those laws passed and those things changed.
You both spoke on something. You talked about becoming the people in power, and the question I had earlier, and I missed it somehow. For you, you guys on that, why did you feel it was important to become a cop or to become a probation officer? Why did you want to become those things? Why was it necessary for more? Why don't you think more black people are in those positions or want to be in those positions?
Oh, when I first started applying to be a cop, I initially did not want to work in New Haven. Personally, I just felt like I didn't want to work in New Haven because that's where I grew up, and it'd be difficult to work in the same city that I grew up in. Throughout several years of applying, I figured, hey, why not apply to be in New Haven? You can make a difference in your own community. I think more people don't apply. I would say mostly just because of the negative aspect. Some of us have grown up with police officers. Like I said, I've had negative aspects growing up with police officers myself. And that was part of the reason why it kind of geared me away from applying to New Haven in the first place. But then I got to the realization was like, hey, if I'm gonna help any community out, it might as well be my own. I think more people don't apply. It's like negative aspects. Some people believe they don't qualify. Some people aren't qualified. It's a lot of reasons. I would say the biggest one is just because of the negative aspect. 2017, cops have a really bad rap. Definitely among the African American community. So, like me, I get it rough out there sometimes. I get asked the tough questions, and sometimes I don't have an answer for it. So being a police officer as an African American in 2017 is tough. So I think a lot of people don't look towards being a police officer just because you see on TV, you see the shootings, you see the people being arrested, you have the biased laws, and you just see like, that's not for me. It's never been for me, so why should I work? Why should I be a cop? That's how I see it, at least.
I think that there's a lot of people who don't want to apply for those positions just straight out of fear. And you're going against the code of the streets of what you know, what your community said. I know in my community, being a police officer was not cool. Being a probation officer was not cool. When I started, like I said, I started in juvenile detention, then I moved into bail, so I was a bail commissioner for a while, and then I came over to probation. Just conversations in my family alone. It's kind of like, why you want to be a fed? I'm not a fed. I'm a probation officer. But that's what we're taught. We're taught very early that cops are bad. You know, I already shared. My father was incarcerated 14 and a half years out of my life. So when I became the PO, my father's like, really? Really? You really want to be a PO? I'm like, yeah, why not? Why not? So you have fear. There's confidence is another thing. You know, are you gonna be able to stand within your neighborhood and be who you are? I'm comfortable. I eat well, and I go home in the same neighborhood and have no problems. And because I have that confidence, it doesn't necessarily carry over into my personal life. I can go in the same hood and still be me, and they can respect me in my position as a PO, and they can respect me in my position as Tyra. They know the difference. So I really, really think it's just about you kind of not wanting to have that reputation of turning your back on the hood or whatever your culture was, you know. Again, a lot of my friends, unfortunately, they are not doing what they were supposed to do. Multiple people. I can I could call out probably about 20, 30 names off the top of my head. I work and live in the same city. Every other person that walked by my desk, hey Tyra, hey Tyra, hey Tyra, hey Tyra. I'm cool. You know, when I go to court to serve a warrant, I'm cool. I know it's probably going to be about 30 people in the hallway before I get there. But it's all about confidence and how you carry yourself and being able to live outside of what you've been told and be comfortable with that. I chose to live my life a better way. You know, my father's actions didn't dictate who I was going to be. As a bail commissioner, I can recall one time my father being arrested and bond being set on him. And then my coworker the next morning was like, oh, I met your dad. And I'm like, wait, what? What do you mean you met my dad? Where? You know, and for him, it's like a badge of honor. Oh yeah, my daughter's the bail commissioner. No, that's not what you tell folks when you're getting arrested. Don't tell them that. But I'm cool and I'm confident, you know, okay, so far. You know somebody in my family who got arrested. You want to share one of yours? And we can kind of laugh and joke and move on. So, you know, it's unfortunate a lot of us don't want to get outside of that comfort zone. I'm cool with being a Fed. It works.
For me, well, I'll be funny Texas, and I would immediately respond to the feds. So, jokingly. However, being a lawyer, it's not as, I don't want to say, it's different from wanting to be a cop or a probation officer. Like, want to be a cop, I feel as though those are things, well, a lawyer too, but you really have to be in that line of work. You want to have to deal with the community on a daily basis, the negative side of the community. For lawyers and for us, it's just, you have to want to go to school. Like, you have to literally want to give 12 hours a day of your life reading textbooks. You have to want to give up an entire summer to study for an exam that if you can't pass, you cannot be a lawyer.
Right.
And I mean, I've really seen since I've become a lawyer, and I'm talking like I've been a lawyer forever, but since I've been in law school, more and more minorities are at least applying to schools, and more schools are making more of an effort to make the classroom and the bench, meaning the bar that is, meaning all the lawyers in the area, look like the community in which they're coming from. I mean, I'm lucky enough, my best friend, everyone knows right now, is in law school. And I tell her this all the time, calm down, calm down. But like, that's something that I'm not gonna say I had something to do with it, but I can help her and we can help each other, help other people. So I think mine is different from the probation officers and the cops. It's just, you have to wanna give up pretty much your life for 4 years. And then the rest of your life on top of that.
Well, I definitely agree. It's important that the people that the kids are unfortunately in some circumstances coming in contact with, it makes a difference when they look like them and they possibly are able to better relate to the situations that they're in. So I think it's very important. And I appreciate people like you that are taking on those roles when you kind of get looked down upon because you're in those positions. So I'm just going to end with one more question. This is going to be for everybody on the panel. As we've talked about, police are often looked at negatively in our communities. They're, a lot of times for kids, it's like they're here to harm us as opposed to being here to help us. So what can be done to help improve the relationships between our inner city communities and our local police departments? What are some solutions? We'll start with Jade and we can work our way down.
I think, like, I know me, I walk home out of the week probably 5-6 times, and I see police all the time. They don't speak to me. The police walking, the police in cars. Even if I say hi, sometimes they give me a look. And I also think like, I say that to say I think they should be more vocal with the community, getting to know them. Hey, how you doing, what school you go to, you got a game this week, you know, things like that. Build relationships with the community. And I think programs, you know, I live in Newhallville, and Bassett has I think their church has a basketball tournament every summer. You don't hear about a police ran basketball tournament. Like this year, I only played for one police program. I played for the Power League, and that's all I ever heard about. That's the only program I heard about growing up in New Haven. So I feel like they should be more involved with us, program-wise, relationship-wise, things like that.
I think it's important for us to have a better relationship with them, and I know in Hamden I'm on the Youth Advisory Council, and every 3 months we meet with different people in the community, and there's people that are on the police force that meet with us there so they can find out different ways to interact with us better and find out different ways just to make us more comfortable. But I also think it's important for us to have more representation on the police force and see more people that look like us, so that way it's not always a white person or someone that we feel threatened by, so we see our own.
I agree and disagree with Jaden at the same time. I do agree more community policing should be done, particularly in, I guess, more targeted neighborhoods where police are called to more often. Definitely, like, get to know those communities so that you have more of a relationship, so that there won't be another Michael Brown or whoever. However, as far as just saying hi, you know, to be vocal, if I'm walking down the street and I'm not doing nothing, sir, don't stop me. Like, if I didn't do anything, don't bother me. I think that's a lot of where that tension comes from. Like, it's like, what did I do? Like, officer, I ain't do nothing. So yes, being polite, you know, when you see someone on a daily basis, of course, you know, give them a nod, a head shake, like, like nod your head, little wave, say hi, whatever, but don't just go saying hi to random people. I don't think that'll end very well. But something I think that would be very beneficial would be like peer, I guess, education, like police teaching the community and the community teaching the police. I'm not sure how open people would be to that, but I definitely think that it would be something that could be helpful. Like police, like he was saying, you know, teach the people, this is why we do what we do. Like, if this were the situation, this could be the consequence. Whereas the other way around also, like saying, hey, officer, like maybe try doing this way, and people will feel less intimidated. Whereas, you know, you're doing this and this is why. It works both ways. Like, this is why the cops are doing one thing, but also the vice versa. Whereas the people are telling the cops, this is why we're reacting in the ways that we are. I think that would be very helpful.
I think personally, it's like, it seems to be like a wall in between like people in the community and police officers. Perfect example, how she just said, if she's walking down the street, cop walking down the street, don't say hi to me, don't say nothing to me, don't stop me. That's a huge wall in between. You feel that way, you're obligated to feel that way, and you probably have some justified reasons to feel that way. But that's part of the issue. There's no reason why a cop, say me, if I was in uniform, you probably would look at me and look the other way and not say a word to me. That's a huge issue. Because at the end of the day, I'm a human being just like you. I should be able to walk down the street, whether I'm in uniform or not, and say, hey, how you doing? And get, hey, how you doing right back. There's no reason why, I don't know whether it's fear, disrespect, or whatever the reason may be, that not only just you, but a lot of people feel that way. I'm walking down the street, I say hi to somebody, and they just give me that look the other way, and don't say a word to me. Black, white, doesn't matter. I'm in uniform, I'm a police officer to them at that point, and they don't want to speak to me. If I take my uniform off, I walk down the street, I look like this most of the time when I'm off duty. I walk down that same street, see that same person, they'll probably say hi to me. I've seen people I've known for years growing up in New Haven, while I'm on duty, in uniform, say hi to them, they don't say a word to me back. And these are people I went to high school with, went to elementary school with, played baseball, basketball with. So I think it's a big, big wall in between like the community and police, where it just needs to be torn down. And it's going to take a lot of effort. It's not just something simple where one day it just snaps and all of a sudden the community is friendly and buddy-buddy with the police. It's not going to happen that way. But it starts with education. It starts with being able to say hi to somebody in the community, because it tends to, I hate to say it, but like people get in a position of law enforcement, they tend to put themselves on a pedestal. Not all people, but some, maybe most people put themselves on that pedestal. And some people that don't put themselves on that pedestal, the community just sees them that way because that's how they're used to cops being. So when I walk down the street in uniform, I'm trying to say hi to somebody, they think I'm just the everyday cop that thinks they can talk to somebody however they want to, puts themselves on that pedestal, and they're like, I'm not going to say hi to that cop. So it's not a black and white answer of how to solve it, but there definitely are steps on how to figure it possible. But me personally, I've had conversations with people all the time. I've had conversations with people on the street that I've arrested before, multiple times. And I've stopped them, I've arrested them, and I've stopped them, no reason at all. I have a simple conversation with them. Hey, how you doing, man? How's Alec been since you got out? You trying to get yourself right, blah, 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 stuff like that. No reason to stop them. Not trying to arrest them, no reasonable suspicion, no probable cause, no nothing. Just having a simple conversation. And that gets you that little bit of respect for that next time you have to deal with that person. They give you that respect of, man, you're just doing your job. Which 99% of the time, that's what I'm doing, just trying to do my job. I'm not out there trying to arrest people for extra pay or benefits or something like that. I don't give out tickets, there's no ticket quota, no nothing like that. 9 out of 10 times, I'm just doing my job. And when you give that respect to people in the community, when you can sit down and have that conversation with people in the community, when you can have that conversation about somebody's shoes or somebody being fashionable, when it comes down to, hey, I got to give you this ticket for running that red light.
Your shoes are nice.
You have that small relationship you have with me, that can be the difference between you having that attitude with me for giving you that ticket, or you being like, damn, I did run that red light, I do deserve this ticket. So it's just that little bit that can help sometimes. And it's, like I said, on the small scale it helps, and on the big scale it's tough, but like I said, I can't speak for all cops, but on a small scale, those little conversations I have with people go a long way.
Again, I think community policing is vital, but it has to be, it's a two-way relationship. You can't expect the cop to come into the community if the community is not willing to allow the cop to come in here. It might not be the most comfortable conversation to have in the very beginning, and the relationship might be rocky, but both parties have to be willing and consistent. I've been in positions with working at a community center where here we have this building a bridge type program. The cop comes 3-4 weeks, and then after that, he or she is gone. And it's not necessarily because that one particular cop doesn't want to be there. It could just be budget issues. But again, the community has to be open to it. You know, we all have that northeastern attitude where it's kind of, I'm walking because I'm trying to get somewhere. I don't necessarily want to be stopped. But at the same time, a hi and a hello goes a long way. You know, with my clients, I've had clients where I had to write warrants on them. I'm quite sure they had a whole bunch of choice words for me in the event of once they got arrested. But there's no fear once they come back in the office that we're going to have an issue because they take responsibility for their action. I've always respected them in that right. So even when I say, hey, just be prepared that a warrant's coming, okay, Ms. Latyra, how much is it going to be? As opposed to, you're not going to arrest me, you know, blah, 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 blah. Respect goes a long way. But I do think the relationship has to start and it has to be consistent.
For me, was Jaden down there?
Yeah.
I agree 100% with Jaden. I think that is one of the best things we can do to start. However, so I guess it's 95% agree with Jaden. The other 5% is it just can't be police from that community. You have to integrate, and I think Morgan touched on this, where it can't just be black cops going into black communities. You have to bring the white cops from Greenwich who work in New Haven with you, because it takes away from that stigma or that fear of coming in contact with a white cop. As simple as, even Tilly can do this. Even if Tilly said there's not any events that you guys have, let's say there is like Yeah, like this. Invite your white or your other colleagues that aren't African American to events like this. For example, I hate to put you on the spot, but Toos, raise your hand for me. Toos and I went to law school together. I said, Toos, I'm on this panel talking about community issues in New Haven, socioeconomic and minorities dealing with police. You want to come? Toos showed up. It's about integration. It's about taking away that stigma and that fear of dealing with someone who doesn't look like you. Because as we pointed out, everyone doesn't look like us.
At this point, I will open the floor to a couple of questions. I saw Ms. Jackson hand first, so let's start right there. Just let them know if you're addressing somebody in particular, you can let them know who it is.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to say you guys did a great job. Carol, that word for you though. Basically, I wanted to remark on Otis asking you all how you could weed out bad cops. And you all automatically went to biases. We all have inherent biases. It's who we all are. So it's not about doing that as much as it is, you know when a cop is bad. Just as Trump said, you Muslims know which ones are bad. It's like, you cops know which cops are bad. If you get rid of the bad cops, you give yourself a fairer playing field. You understand what I'm saying? Because black people don't just dislike cops for no reason. Systematically, they've been just broken down and abused, where the law states they're there to protect and serve. For us, we get the law and order part of it. Not the protect and serve, but the law and order. And to you, Daniel Tilley, kudos to you, because I applaud you coming back and working in your environment. So I just wanted to state that you all, with regards to addressing the weeding out of bad cops, not inherent biases, we have those, but just being strong enough to weed out bad cops. And to the point for Castillo, it wasn't a white cop that shot him, by the way. So it's like, once you become a cop, it seems like there's a whole different color. We got black, we got white, and then we have blue. And so once you become a part of that blue, it seems as though there's a code there. How do you get rid of those bad cops?
Like I said, it's not a black and white thing. As far as a black cop, white cop, as far as black and white and dealing with it as far as legal wise, it's a big gray area in between there. Like you said, everyone has biases. That's correct. Then you have cops that may shoot somebody because they're black, they're racist, and things of that nature. Like I said, that's above my pay grade. I don't get paid to make those decisions. I understand it's there, but like I said, it's hard to weed out between racist biases and stuff like that. Like I said when I was answering his question, it's there. I'm not denying that. But when it comes to a point where you're trying to prove someone's being racist or prove someone's being biased or prove that an officer was really fearing for his life or whatever the reason of what he did, like I said, it's a gray area. It's not all black and white. It's not just, like I said when I was answering this question, if you have someone in the background investigation, their father's a member of the KKK or some other racial organization like that, black and white, that makes sense. But when it comes to making a split-second decision in a situation where it could have been a number of things of why he made that decision, it's hard to weed out that certain officer for that reason, where in your eyes it may have been, he's racist, that's why he did it. In his eyes it was because he did X, Y, and Z, I fear for my life, or whatever reason it may be. Like I said, I don't have the answer for it. Unfortunately, I do not have the answer to your question. I wish I did. But it's a difficult decision when it comes to that split-second moment where it may be someone being arrested, maybe someone being shot, someone being killed or something to that nature.
Oftentimes before a cop shoots someone dead, If you look back, how many incidents did they have where they were abusive towards someone, slamming them to the ground, or just using excessive force? That's what I'm getting at. Not race, looking at the cop and their actions and holding bad cops accountable. Before you escalate the whole thing. And you know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
okay. That's all. I just wanted to make it.
Yep.
I'm gonna stand. I don't normally speak at events, but I'm just gonna speak. I grew up in the projects, and there was a substation right across the street from the building I lived in. The police interacted with the neighborhood every day, to a point that there was this white police officer that I'm still in touch with. He sends my mother Christmas cards every year. He used to take us out in vans. He would get a van, take us all out. I learned photography. My deceased brother, he played every sport and had trophies for every sport because of this Tom Morrissey. I don't know if anybody in here knows or heard his name. He was wonderful. The black police officers also, but I just remember Tom taking us out and doing all these things. And he actually purchased the plot for my brother when he got killed. We need, that's what we need in the communities. I am big on the village. I feel like I am part of the village. We had a village in the projects. If I did something my next door neighbor saw, they could beat me or spank me and then take me home and my mother spanked me too. I mean, you can't do that today. You cannot. And I am the village. Like I see the little sweetheart here.
I thank you,
I have
'cause I
a feeling
saw
that
you.
she's yours because I saw you looking. But you know, I'm like, are you okay, sweetie? Do you need anything? Because that's who I am. But then I'm thinking like, I saw you looking, so I'm like, it must be her daughter. But I don't want anybody thinking like, what is she? You know, I'm kind of scared to talk to kids because it's like, what is she doing? What is she saying to my child? You know. But we need that village. We need it back. That's all.
Thank you.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
You're not the first.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that this room should have 1,000 people in it. It should, sitting here, talking with the esteemed panel that you have there. And I really want to say thank you to every one of you, and this type of thing should happen on a continual basis, because who knows what something is being said here, because I've learned some things since I've been here that might save the life of a young man like this, because it could be something that is said that could be you know, it was said because someone asked a question and then it was answered that this young man's life is being saved. So we need to do this kind of thing more often, is all I'm saying. And I thank every one of you for your efforts of being here.
So back to what we were discussing before. So I am an assistant teacher in New Haven. I worked in Hamden for a period of time too. We don't have guns. And we are faced with situations where kids do come at us. You know, I was faced with a situation where I had to correct a child for his behavior, and he's like, I got a gun on me right now. So we have to learn how to handle situations without guns. And we also can't always go and hem a child up and put him on the ground and restrain him, and, you know. So we learn as teachers to handle those situations in a different way, without escalating the situation. And when there's a teacher or a principal who doesn't, we can openly say, that's a bad employee. And I don't fear for my job. I don't have to toe the line. I can just say it. That principal dragged that child down the hallway, and that's ridiculous, and she needs to be fired.
he needs to be fired. It feels to me sometimes that when people are wearing blue, that maybe their language changes a little bit. And they don't feel as free to say, that's ridiculous, that was racist, this is, you know, this is unjust, that person needs to be fired, although they're colleagues. Do you guys feel, or can you even say openly, that you feel pressure in the force to not call people out that way because of your own safety, your job security?
I know I can say as a probation officer, we don't have guns either. We rely on verbal de-escalation. We're given some OC, which is like pepper spray, a baton, and I got sweet baby Jesus on my side. That's how I get home. I don't have a gun. So I honestly have to lean on my way of thinking and my words and how I interact and talk to people. Is it always easy? Absolutely not. When we have incidents in the office, I can think of one in particular where there was a PO who disrespected my client, like completely disrespected my client. I just so happened to be in the bathroom taking a urine on another client and walked out on the chaos. I know my client. I know my client is not disrespectful. I know that if he's gotten to that point, something occurred. After separating the two, I bring my client in the room, I'm speaking to my client. The first thing he does is apologizes to me. Because he's like, I don't want, them to look at you to think that you don't have, a good client or, I'm out of control. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with anything. You explain to me your side of the story, we'll figure it out. From there, I went to my supervisor. I don't have a problem with it. I said to my supervisor, listen, I've worked with this guy 2.5 years. He has never even cursed in front of me. So if he's gotten to that point, that was simply because it was pushed. And come to find out, all the other clients that was in the lobby at that time all matched his story. And from there, with me talking to my supervisor, she was able to handle it. And to this day, that particular person doesn't speak to me. But I'm not fearful of how anybody's going to respond to me. If you disrespect a person,
But
you get what you get.
Just in-house, but in a forum like this. To the community, could you say that situation?
I don't have a problem with calling people out.
Mm-hmm.
Own your stuff. If you were bad enough to do it, you should be bold enough to take the consequences. Mm-hmm. That's just me, though. Not everybody's within that comfort zone.
To answer your question, I don't feel pressured as far as saying like, hey, this is wrong, you shouldn't have did that, you shouldn't have handled it that way. As far as like wording stuff and language changing and stuff like that, I'll be quite honest. My language has changed since I've become a cop. Not because of pressure of like repercussions or anything like that. It comes with the job. Not far as speaking to community, like so correct me if I'm wrong, but I would like to think that I'm the same person I was before I joined the force. You've known me for how long? I think you can attest to that I'm still the same person. As far as calling people out,
God bless you.
Mr. Jill.
It would be good.
Far as calling people out, I don't think it's as publicized as people think that like racist cops get fired from the job. It happens all the time. I don't know, as far as my department, me personally, I've never come to an incident where I've had to call the cop to say, hey, you did this because you're a racist, or you did this because of some bias or something like that. I've never had that situation personally. But there's other situations around the country that's been put on the news that I don't agree with. And we've had conversations in the department all the time about situations that happen on the news because we learn from them. We see situations that officers reacted differently to where we are trained to react, so we train to react a different way, so that won't happen in our city. I like to think that we haven't had really a bad incident in New Haven that's been publicized on the news, as in like other cities as Baton Rouge or other cities like that. But as far as like feeling pressured and feel like I can't call out a police officer or like my job's online, no, I don't feel that way.
And I just want to clarify, with that incident that I spoke on, race had nothing to do with it. It was just plain old disrespect.
So take one more and then
I have one.
that'll be the last one.
Officer Tilly, did your department do anything in respect to the black undercover cop that was recently shot while trying to apprehend a suspect? And he was shot by another officer. He was in his own neighborhood. I guess they were trying to apprehend someone on the street. And some of the other cops recognized him. A different cop pulled up and didn't and shot him because he thought he was a suspect.
To be completely honest, and I'm not BSing you, I have no idea about that situation. I'm not even kidding. I'm not trying to BS you because I don't want to say the wrong thing. I genuinely not aware of that situation, and you are the first time I've ever heard of it.
It's in the news.
Yeah, it happened in St. Louis, in the suburb. And I think that what struck me was...
Oh, it didn't happen. Oh, I thought
it happened in St. Louis.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And the thing that struck me was the cop said the same thing as he would about a regular suspect. He was like, I fear for my life.
Right.
And he shot him after two other cops told him it was okay. They recognized
They
him.
recognized that he was
And
an
just rolled up on
undercover
the
cop.
scene. According to the news report, he just rolled up.
Was that the
Shot
one
him.
where he was in the car?
He came out
No,
of his
he
house.
was in his neighborhood. He
Okay.
lived there.
So that's just that whole thing. He said he feared for his life, and it seemed to be
That's the response
thing.
to everything. As long as you fear for your life, you can do whatever you want.
do.
It's open season.
Well, here's the thing.
I'm sorry.
No, I get it. Trust me, I get it. Like I
Every
said,
day,
I
I know
was
365.
no, trust me, I hear all the time, and like I explained earlier, I was a part of the community long before I became a cop. So before when everything started happening, like I'll say 3-4 years ago is when like everything really started hitting the media. I wasn't a cop yet.
Right.
So trust me, I understand that point of view. But also now being a cop, I understand being in situations like that. You fear for your life a lot. We're not robots. We have hearts. We bleed just like everybody else. A lot of the situations we are in, more often than not, we fear for our lives.
So how can you fear for his life if the other cops have already told him,
Well,
he's good?
I don't, like I just said, I have no idea about that situation. You are the first time I ever heard of it. But not so much I'll get to you in 1 second. I was not saying every situation we get into, we fear for our lives. And like I
It
said,
just seems like that's the response
I
to
got
everything.
you.
Whether
But-
you really fear or not, as long as I say that, I'm good.
No, I got you. But like I said, I'm not saying every situation we fear for our lives. Like this, we signed up for it. This is what we do. Whether we fear for our lives, we gotta do our job correctly. But at the same time, we're human. If a certain situation pops up where I fear for my life and I feel like I have to do something to protect me, to make sure I go home, then at that point, I have to do what I have to do to make sure I get home safe, make sure my coworkers get home safe at the end of the day. Like I said, I don't know about that situation personally.
I just didn't know if you're forced, like you said, sometimes they meet and try to make sure these things aren't happening. Nothing was discussed, in the New Haven Police Department.
I've been off for like 3 days. I haven't been to work. Maybe they talk about it, maybe they not. I haven't been there.
Okay, when you go back and you find out.
I'll let you know.
All this, so you can
tell you one second.
I just give you a lot of credit because it takes a lot of courage to sit here because obviously a lot of animosity.
Yes,
So I don't want to think I was personally attacking you.
Trust me, I
say is I saw that thing in Wallingford where the young lady, it was a white young girl coming out of concert, ran some people over, ran at the cops.
Yeah.
Cop broke a window, and she got arrested. You know what I mean? So that's it. I think when you look at those, it's like, wow. You know what I mean? And I think the other thing too, in terms of your situation, like the unions, some of the things that, from a community standpoint, when the unions come out and say we don't want body cams, or whenever something happens in New York, that Lynch dude is the first one to come out and say, oh, our officer was justified. And it just kind of continues to, as you referred to earlier, was building that wall. So I guess the question is, how do you continue to break down that wall?
Oh yeah,
I think you give a lot of credit for being here doing that.
Like I said, that wall it's a monster, and it's going to take a while to break down. If it ever gets torn down, to be completely honest, because it's so much of that barrier, and it's like you have people that want to break that wall, you have people that don't want to break that wall, you have some cops it's like, I don't care, I go home, I do my 8-hour shift, I go home, I don't care about the community. So it's difficult. Like I said, a lot of our work is a big gray area. There's nothing really, even though there's laws written, there's a lot of stuff where it's like, well, you can do this if this is happening. You can do this if this is happening. There's a lot of gray area with what we do. So when we try to sit down and like explain it to somebody in a 1-2 hour session, a lot of people walk away thinking they understand the law or understand it one way, but they don't understand it completely. So that's why I said, like, education-wise, like, I personally think there should be a course in school, at least starting in high school, middle school, where it's mandatory to take a class about law and dealing with police officers. That would be, me personally, I think that would be the first step to tearing down that wall. Because just like some people said, I think Jaden said, oh, I can't get arrested without a warrant. That is 100% not true. And that's no fault to him because he wasn't taught anything different. And you're not expected to know anything different because you don't have a class on it. I know different because I'm a police officer. Sheldon may know different because he's a lawyer. She may know different because she's a probation officer. We're in that field. But it shouldn't be just the people in that field understand that is. Civilians should know that too because it's their lives that are in jeopardy at that point. They should understand the laws that put their lives in jeopardy. It makes no sense where someone doesn't understand why they can be arrested. That also builds the animosity. When I go arrest somebody that believes they're going to get arrested with a warrant, I walk up and arrest them. They're like, why you arresting me? Blah, blah, blah. And then that just builds on top of the wall. If someone understands whether it's a petty crime of snatching a purse or a murder, if they understand why they're getting arrested, I swear to you, the relationship between police officers and community is completely different. I arrest people all the time for selling drugs, breaking into cars, and etc. But when it comes to them understanding why they get arrested, it's a completely different tone they take with you. When they don't understand why they're getting arrested, that's where the animosity builds.
But are you obligated to tell them?
No, we are not obligated to tell them.
Okay then. 90% of the time, they don't.
Like I said, we're not obligated to tell somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I take it upon myself to explain to somebody.
You're officer friendly.
Like, I can arrest someone get arrested for a warrant.
Mm-hmm.
You run their name, they have a warrant, they get arrested. Mm-hmm. As far as I know, I'm not obligated to explain to them why they get arrested. I take it upon myself to explain to them why they get arrested. I had this situation not too long ago. I took it upon myself to look up what the warrant was for and explain to him, mm-hmm. Hey, this is why you get arrested. The warrant was from 3 years ago. He had no idea he had it. I had no reason or any reason to explain to him why he was arrested. Mm-hmm. I arrested him, I sent it down, let the court explain it to him. Mm-hmm. He's irate, I don't know why, this is BS, blah, blah, blah. I said, hey, let me look into it, I'll let you know. I explained it to him, he was like, damn man, that did happen, blah, blah, blah. It was not long, but it did happen. So at that point, he knew he did it. He knew why he was getting arrested, and his tone completely changed at that point. Before he knew that, he had no idea why he was getting arrested, and he was completely angry, didn't want to hear anything. So I said, yo, look, I'm gonna look it up and explain to you. Completely changed from there.
We need more officers like you.
Mm-hmm. Clone yourself. Could you do that?
So we can continue to do this all night long because I know there's a lot more stuff that you want to talk about, but all night we're out of time. So I just want to thank the panel because it was great information, great time. In particular, I want to thank Officer Tilley here because this was not my idea. This was something that he came to me with after the last panel and said, this is something that we need to do. So a special hand for Officer Tilley.